7 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, September 24th, 2019 council meeting, and welcome all of you here. Mr. Johnson, would you lead us in the pledge, and would everyone remain standing after the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to do a moment of silence. Courtney Cox Cole, who most of everyone knows in Noblesville, lost her battle, I think it was a 7-year battle, Saturday evening, I believe. And so, Sunday evening, if we could do a moment of silence, appreciate it. Thank you. Please keep her and her family in your thoughts and prayers. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Boyce.
Here.
Mr. Hampton.
Here.
Mr. Jensen.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor.
Present.
Mr. Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Taylor.
Present.
Ms. Wiles.
Here.
Mr. Ayers.
Present.
Mr. President, you have your quorum.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for the September 10th, 2019 council meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. 8 with 1 abstention. The approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries. Petition or comments by citizens who are present. I have none. If someone would like to speak, there's comment cards to be filled out right outside the door. If you'll fill those out and deliver them to clerk, I'd appreciate it. Mr. Mayor, Mayor's report to council.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. On the 11th, I was at Our Lady of Grace, which I've done for a number of years for a 9/11 ceremony. Several of our first responders were also there. As I think about it, none of those students were live on November 11th, but again, it's important to remember it. We had a ribbon cutting for the Urban Air Adventure Park. It is in the old marsh at 37. Had a ribbon cutting for Luxury Journey Travel on South 9th. Did attend a fundraising dinner at Garin Catholic evening of the 17th. We cut the ribbon for our new offices and at Forest Park Inn. Again, finally got those people in a lot better shape with their staff. And then Friday night, I attended the annual Fire Chief's annual banquet, at which time our own Noblesville Fire Chief, Greg Wyatt, was named Indiana Chief of the Year. And also, Mike Carr, a member of our department, was also the Indiana Firefighter of the Year for his action, mostly on May 25th. Upcoming, we have a luncheon tomorrow, chamber luncheon. Reception Saturday evening will be a great evening. We are having a reception and introducing the Charters of Freedom dedication at the
Green Room?
The park. I'm sorry, it's really cool. I invite everyone out, and then have another ribbon cutting for Medi weight loss, small business. But I did meet them at the Urban Air. So, any questions of me? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council committee reports. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Downtown District Committee met on September 16th at 3 o'clock, and we are starting to get our hands around light fixtures and signal poles and getting that money reinvested back into the downtown district, and started to look into 2020 projects and 21 and 22, 23 projects as well. The Levinson Anybody who's following the Noblesville Now campaign is back under construction. You can get more details on the Noblesville Now website. Other construction projects, there are no active facade grants currently. Thane Bouchong's building, Indian Kitchens at 925 and 930 Connor Street has started work, but we currently don't have any applications in. We discussed the first reading on the parking program, and there really was no negative feedback. It was just a discussion about a great job from the chamber and everybody who was involved in that project. Alley activation, we've got a new contractor involved, and we should start to see some work on that this fall. We also discussed the Globe Asphalt Project, the 100th mile of trail. Anybody who saw that on Facebook or was there, discussed that for some of our decorative crosswalks downtown. Seminary Park is under construction. I get to see that every day from my office, and it is coming along. It should be finished the end of October, weather permitting. And the Archway project is an RFP out there. If anybody knows a sculptor or welder, that project's out there for solicitation. Flower pots should be coming in the 1st of October. You're going to see those, which we ordered several months ago.
Right.
But we're waiting to change the flowers over. We have no patio. We have the new patio fencing that we're going to recommend for the downtown district in front of Texas Mexi. We currently have no applications in for that as well. Anybody who's interested in that program. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And
President,
Ms. Wiles?
the Finance Committee met on September 19th, and Mr. Spalding was very happy to introduce Mr. Sam Barris as our newest staff member in the Office of Finance, so we're very thrilled to have you here with us, which he's going to be presenting later on the agenda this evening, so it's trial by fire, so jump right in. Mr. Spalding did present to the Finance Committee a draft of the 2020 Civil City Budget, which proposed with overview and highlights, which we were just reviewing prior to this meeting this evening. We do have an item on our agenda talking about a appropriation transfer, so I won't go into that into too much detail in my committee report. And the claims were reviewed and come to this council with an approval and recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Wiles. Any other committee reports? Mr. O'Connor?
Very brief Parks Board update. We heard from the Recreation Director, Director of Golf. Golf revenues are surprisingly up because the weather has been much better. So that's a positive, and hopefully that'll continue through September. The Finch Creek Park construction should wrap up here in the next 30 to 45 days, hopefully. If you've been out there recently, the pickleball courts are in, the shelter's in, so it's probably more aesthetics that need to be finished over the next 30 days, but hopefully that will be ready to go. The Noblesville United Soccer Club continues to grow, as you would expect with the city growth. Heard a report from them. Talked a little bit about the fencing that Mr. Bennett has requested around that area where the soccer fields are. There were some conversations about adjustments to fees and contract for the Ivy Tech Recreation Annex, so they're working on that. And the new golf greens fees and proposals for that should be forthcoming, so that's kind of a thumbnail on the meeting, but productive, things are moving ahead.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
Need a motion on the claims?
Please.
Move to approve the claims.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for approval of claims. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Previously discussed ordinances. Council to consider ordinance 38-09-19, an ordinance amending a development plan for the Chick-fil-A restaurant to include additional canopies and landscaping, a part of the Saxony corporate campus at 14098 Bergen Boulevard. Ms. Reed.
Hi, you get me tonight instead of Joyce Ann. This item is before you for a second reading this evening, comes to you with a 9-1 favorable recommendation from the Plan Commission, which was heard in August. At that Plan Commission meeting, we discussed increased landscaping, increased architectural enhancements on the canopies, which includes brick to match the building facades, as well as painting or coating the fans, canopy, and heaters, all to be black or dark bronze to match the structure. No additional changes have been made since the last time you've seen this item, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Mr. Boyce?
Quick question. So what happens Chick-fil-A leaves, somebody else comes in? Is this grandfathered then to them, or is this single use for them?
This is a PD amendment, so as long as it's what Mr. Peterson would refer to as a quick service restaurant, it would be able to remain.
For just this site or for other?
Just this site.
Okay.
Just this site, yeah.
Just this Chick-fil-A, this particular one in Saxony. No other ones at this point.
I'm curious, I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, knowing we have Mr. Peterson against it. If we could do something to where it would be for this Chick-fil-A only, if that would,
She said it was.
no, but when they leave, if.
Oh.
Oh,
Right now, it is site-specific.
Site-specific.
On the land.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
question would be if it wasn't a Chick-fil-A.
Correct.
would it just be a conditional?
Could we make it a conditional approval that needed to go back?
I could say if you did that, you could do that, but then it would have to go back to Plan Commission to be recertified again one more time.
It would.
And it would have to be recertified.
Right.
By the Plan Commission. They meet again in 2 weeks.
My concerns were not, they've done a lot to improve the aesthetics and the sort of, it looks less industrial. My concerns were just safety. The car hop situation, I just don't like it. So that was it had nothing to do with aesthetics.
And I was gonna say, it was a 9-1 vote, so you can guess which the one vote was.
I figured that one out already, absolutely. Thank you.
We were minus a Plan Commission member too, so.
Mr. Taylor?
My concern is that we're going to have others come in front of us and do the same thing, and let's not forget, we have another Chick-fil-A in town, and they have the same issue there as they do out at exit 210, so that's my concerns.
Yes, and I would I know that wasn't actually a question, but just to respond to that is that we review each site specifically for its own unique elements. That site is way more packed than this particular one. So I know that there is precedence out there, but we review each site specifically from the planning standpoint before we make a favorable or unfavorable.
The site is smaller.
Yes, much
The
smaller.
the Hamilton Town Center site,
Yes,
right, yes.
no, the other Chick-fil-A site. This site's larger.
I went to
Sorry.
the one that was on Keystone last week to try because they have very similar, and it actually works pretty well. I was
I'm impressed.
less
that you tried
concerned
it out.
after I went. Well, I'm sorry?
Did you try it out on purpose because of this?
Yes,
Or, okay.
yep.
Well, good.
Well, I always like Chick-fil-A too.
I mean, I
I
was
will
the same.
admit, I am a Chick-fil-A fan, so it wasn't real hard to, but yes.
But isn't this also similar to what we did with the crew car wash? When we created that overhang and air canopy area for their people to be able to walk out. So this isn't the first time that a change like this has been implemented.
Correct.
Mr. President, also just a comment, and maybe, to me, I mean, with or without this canopy, the kids are going to be out there taking orders. This appears to me that it would actually make it safer, because you kind of know where they are based on the canopy. Am I right or wrong on that?
I don't know that I can personally speak to the safety. I would assume so. If you would like to hear from the Chick-fil-A representative, he's
He
here
wants
as
to
well.
answer that.
Do you want to? Sure. I'll defer to you. I'm not a safety expert on that.
worries, somebody's angling.
Please state your name and address.
My name's Sam Hartman. I live at 9958 Muirfield Lane in McCordsville, just 5 minutes, 10 minutes south of the store. And yes, your assumption is correct. We've had people outside taking orders and expediting food through the pass-through window for years now without these canopies. And so the addition of the canopies would absolutely allow us to be safer, not only from a weather standpoint, but from a light standpoint. The canopies have the lighting included in them on both locations. So yes, absolutely, it will be a better opportunity for my team to be able to be safer and not only, again, from the cars, but from weather as well.
Thank you.
Certainly. Appreciate the question.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 38-09-19.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve 3809-19. Ms. Cummings, could you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Boyce?
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. Jensen?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Peterson?
Nay.
Mr. Taylor?
Nay.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. President, your vote is 7-0. The ordinance is passed.
7-2.
7-2, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Moving on, miscellaneous number 1, council to consider resolution RC-13-19, a resolution approving increase in local income tax for public safety uses. Mr. Howard.
Good evening. This is a unique procedure where each municipality casts its percentage votes by passing a resolution basically as their percentage vote for or against the ordinance. The ordinance is in your packet. There was a requirement of a notice of public hearing. That notice, unlike most notices, was required to have the entire ordinance including in the notices. So the newspapers have had a very lucrative month. This raises the local income tax from 1% to 1.1%. The 1%, I believe, has been in place. It was a 0.5%, and then it went to 1% in about 1994, and there's been no tax increase since that time. This 1/10 of 1% will be used while it is paid directly to the county. It can only be used for the purposes set out in the statute and in this ordinance. You see, we've put some very broad uses there, and we've talked about some of the anticipated costs. The primary cost, people say, what's the primary cost? The primary cost of running a dispatch center is people, 24/7, lot of training. I ask, by the way, Jeff Schimmer, who is the director of the Communications Center, is in the back row. And if you ask any technical questions beyond what I tell you, that's beyond my knowledge, and that's why we had him here. We talked to Jeff today, and the average dispatcher has 6 weeks of nothing but book-type, computer-type learning. And then they have approximately 6 months at a station with a trainer by them almost all the time. These are people, the cost of these people and the cost of turnover is substantial. And when you call 911, you sure don't want them to have to look something up. You want them to know whatever the procedures are in response to that call. There's been some questions that this will raise revenue when combined with the phone fees that generate a little over $3 million a year, will raise the revenue substantially. Well, as I pointed out in my memo to you, there's some substantial costs coming up. The center that is the lower level of the jail, they're outgrowing that rapidly. The demand for services from our population increases every day. In addition, there's new software systems that can be out there that aren't in the budget. And I think Hamilton County We proved about a year ago that we have an A1 operation, and we sure want to keep it that way. As I pointed out, the 1/10 of 1%, if your adjusted Indiana income is $100,000, that will mean a $100 increase per year. Right now, you're paying, I think, a little over $2 million out of your operating budget toward the interlocal agreement. In addition, this ordinance as written would allow communication systems for the first responders, police, fire, in all of the units, and some of that equipment costs to also be absorbed from this additional revenue. Finally, the resolution, they give you a quick turnaround time in the General Assembly, 30 minutes, or 30 days, I'm sorry, it seemed like 30 minutes. If you're doing all the paperwork for these units, trust me, it seems like 30 minutes. But 30 days after the first unit, which was Arcadia, passes their resolution, it's certified to the auditor, notices go out, and then it's 30 days for every unit to act. Unfortunately, by the time you do the 10 days public hearing notice, allow 2 or 3 days for them to receive the notice, publish it, and you look at our meeting schedule, and unfortunately, it's 3 weeks before our next meeting on the 15th, so that would be outside the area. Again, this is a resolution. We need to open a public hearing for public comments. I will stop unless there's any questions from you now, and if there are any questions that arise from you now or after the public hearing, between Jeff and I, we can probably answer them. Any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Howard? Mr. O'Connor?
Mr. Howard, I'm not sure, this may not be in your lane, but I'll ask the question and our expert might be able to field it. But when you speak about communication, I know we are looking at body cams for our police force for 2020, and I start wondering, well, it's data, it's voice. Does that fall under the realm of communication as defined in the resolution?
You've outkicked my cover.
Jeff, come on down.
Good
evening, I'm Jeff Schimmer, Executive Director for Hamilton County Communications. What we are planning on doing is we will look at those requests, because I'm aware of that, and we're going to look at the pieces of it that can go into the communications part of it. There's a possibility that parts of it won't fit into that, and there's parts of it that will. I know some of the conversations were, connecting it to the CAD system. Well, that causes problems with the CAD system because it'll actually slow it down because of the data that we're processing. But things like storage, which is one of the bigger costs for body cams, could potentially be covered under that because we need storage in the dispatch center itself. So we kind of asked people to give us a list so we can go through to see what we can add towards it. We'll throw in real quick some of the stuff we were talking about, the communications, just based on talking to a lot of the entities that are paying for the radios and repair on them and so forth. We figure by picking those up, we'll probably save those entities about another $2.1 million, if not more. Some of the quotes we originally had were on the low side. When I started getting the figures back, they were actually higher than what we had planned.
Could you cover iPads and equipment that are in the police and fire units?
We cover the mobile data terminals that are in the vehicles. We would also cover the backbone for that. So we would take into account the cellular signals that are used to operate the AVL or to connect with the CAD system. That would be looked at as being picked up as part of the communications.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
I might also add that the we we're talking about is the Communications Committee. Right now, the party under the interlocal agreements, there's a committee that is set there, which basically is the sheriff, representatives of each municipality, and the 4 small towns provide one person. We carried that committee forward in this ordinance so that these will be the people, even though the county council would approve the budget, they would recommend not only the budget, but also the contracts, the services, those types of things that Jeff just talked about that we're looking into spending some of this money for. And as usual, costs will probably continue to grow faster than our increased revenue from more people, and there'll be additional costs, but we feel that this puts us on the track of having communication services paid for outside of the budgets of the units. And frankly, the small municipalities, I mean, I know you've gone through budgets and it's tight, but you have no idea what they're up against. I mean, it's very difficult. So this will help everybody across the board.
President?
Mr. Hampton.
We talked earlier about this. The thing that concerns me a lot about this is the surplus. There seems to be, when you count what the existing tax is, and then when you add this together, it seems to be much more than what is outlined and what they're going to need. But it sounds like you've answered some of that. There's potential for finding sources for that money, and it's all up to the county council, right? Is that,
Well, it'll be based on recommendation by the board, but the county council can't use it anywhere else. It is solely for the costs identified in this ordinance. And so, I didn't write the statute. I would have liked to have that committee be the appropriating entity, but that's not the way our 150 friends see it downtown, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Conlon?
Mr. President?
Mr. Taylor.
I don't really have a question, I just got a comment. They talked about raising this fee for over 10 years. And 10 years ago, I probably would not have voted yes, but we live in a different world now than we did 10 years ago. And I think all of us up here has got a responsibility to keep our citizens safe and definitely keep our public safety people safe. So whatever technology is out there, we need to find the best we can. And it's basically good for the whole community. As Mr. Howard said, the smaller communities, they're not going to be able to afford this on their own, and we're going to end up paying more anyway. So to me, to make it fair and to hope keep our citizens and our public safety people safe, I think we need this.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Boyce?
I just would add that since there's only 3 people, there are 2 people that ran with me and 1 person that's a veteran on the council from when I first came on. 12 years ago when I first ran, one of the main things that I wanted to accomplish, we had 3 dispatch centers in the county at the time, and getting it down to 1. Some people in the audience might throw sticks at me because it definitely got a lot worse before it got better, kind of like cleaning your garage. I think that we are a safer place now that we've only got 1. There were lots of problems where if you were calling from a cell phone, if it went to the wrong tower, you would go to a different dispatch center than was really going to go for that accident. And there were a lot of different potential problems that could have really happened and caused death and severe injuries if we would not have addressed it. And I think that this is something that has been going, and this is kind of the culmination of a lot of that. And so I think I'm very happy to see that we're going to have the 1 fully funded center.
Thank you, Mr. Boyce. Any other comments? With that, we need to have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Been moved to open the public hearing for Resolution RC 13-19.
President,
Mr. O'Connor.
seeing no one from the public coming forward, I'd move to close the public hearing on
RC
13-19. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I need you to read it.
Making a motion to approve RC-13-19.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Be a hand vote. All those in favor of approving RC-13-19, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to transfers. Transfer number 1, council to consider transfer TA-13-19, an appropriation transfer in the Motor Vehicle Highway Fund for the purchase of a leaf vacuum by the street department. And Mr. Spaulding is not here. Our newest city employee, Sam, and I'll get this wrong, Burries?
Barris.
Barris, okay.
Yeah.
Straight from Boulder, Colorado, I see.
Not directly, but originally, yeah.
And you are Mr. Spalding's
Budget analyst.
budget analyst, thank you.
He went to IU,
Okay.
so he's got a little.
It's good for something, right?
A little bit of Hoosier in him, okay.
Mr. President, council members, as we've already talked about, Sam Barris, OFA staff, and we'll be talking about this transfer on behalf of Jeff tonight. So with that, the street department is requesting a transfer of funds to pay for a leaf vacuum. This piece of equipment was originally considered as part of their 2020 budget, but they've subsequently decided that they'd be better off making that purchase now in calendar year 2019. Normally, these types of purchases would be considered as part of the annual capital lease purchase agreement. However, because that's already taken place and there's not enough funds left from it, in this case, we'd just be paying cash for the leaf vacuum. So the anticipated cost is about $205,000. Of that, $12,000 would come from vacancy savings within the department itself. And then the remaining $193,000 would come from non-departmental contingency funds, which have been specifically set aside for purchases like this. So in that specific pot of money, there's currently about $370,000 left from the 2019 budget. This would eat up, as I said, 193 of that, so it would be down to 156,000 after this purchase. And that's all I got. Happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Barris?
Got it.
What are you on the end there?
No.
Mr. President, just a comment. I think this will be a nice addition for the fall for the street department, and hopefully it will help with leaf collection and will also help from a safety standpoint. So I think it's a good move. We all talked about it, and I think it will help the street department be more efficient. So good use of funds, I believe.
I'll echo that. All the folks in District 4 say thank you, because the leaves are coming in. With that, I'm going to make a motion, Mr. President, that we approve Resolution RC 13, transfer TA 1319.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve transfer TA 13-19. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 9-0. Council comments? We have none. I still would like to remind, as the mayor did, we have a pretty nice event coming to Federal Hill Park Saturday evening, dedication of, I can't remember what they... Charters of Freedom. And then there'll be a concert after that. So anybody that can attend, I welcome you. It should be a nice event. And I don't know if it's our last event of the season or not. I can't remember.
I think have a lot of folks. I can't recall. I think there may be another.
With that, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved to adjourned. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.